ready?
Probably not.
Right.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. So the MCU had two of the most highly anticipated movies in 2023 with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Both Guardians Volume 3 and Quantumania have a lot of similarities, but we're going to explain one similar scene in each film that shows why one of them had us saying this,
That was beautiful.
while the other one had us saying this.
What the hell was that?
But first, let's start comparing these many similarities. Both films focus on an Avenger or a group of heroes who are trying to readjust their lives after the events of Avengers Endgame. Peter Quill and the Guardians are trying to move forward after losing their Gamora in Infinity War. While in Quantumania, we see that Scott Lang is basking in the success that he's gotten after he rallied the Avengers to use time travel to bring back the dusted heroes and defeat Thanos in Endgame. Both Star-Lord and Scott have become emotionally distant from the people they love. Star-Lord's on a drinking binge, and Scott has not been as close with his daughter Cassie. The main hero and their allies are sucked into a conflict with a tyrannical villain that rules over an entire civilization. This villain has a past connection with one of the heroes, where this hero saw how truly evil the villain was before they escaped with their lives. There's also a jaded warrior woman who's initially at odds with the main heroes over their mission before they inspire her to become more optimistic, and she aids the heroes in the final battle. There's also a funny supporting character who plays a big part in the fight, and one of the characters who initially worked for the villain attacks the heroes early on, but later turns to the side of good after getting a heart-to-heart from the heroes. And each film's final battle involves a major beatdown between the main heroes and the villain.
Yeah, but that's pretty typical.
Yes, but this battle involves a giant fortress that belongs to the villain, an army of anonymous CGI goons, and huge monsters that are aiding the heroes. Both films also had trailers that teased the death of a major character, but no one actually died. The heroes of each film,
Who did not die?
managed to survive their ordeal, and they escaped the villain's world with the villain defeated, and their rule is now broken. So, those are the similarities. Now let's talk about the scene in each film that are very similar, but show why one movie is a timeless classic and the other one is a story that older franchises will tell their kids about as a cautionary tale.
Y'all are like some cautionary tale shit.
And those scenes are the first scenes in each movie.
Wait, person, you can tell all that just from the first scenes?
Yes, the first scene is vital to a film story. The opening establishes the characters, the stakes, the tone, and in both of these movies, this opening scene shows us what the characters are fighting for. Most importantly, these are the scenes in these movies that establish the villains. So in any kind of storytelling, it's always better to show the audience rather than to tell them, so what they're experiencing will feel more natural. That way, you don't feel like you're being spoon-fed all this information, or worse, being told everything that happened off screen instead of actually seeing it happen.
Oh yeah, the worst part of Secret Invasion is when everyone kept saying that Fury changed since the blip, but we never actually saw how he changed.
Right on, buddy. High five. And Guardians Volume 3, right out of the gate, does a great job of showing rather than telling. The movie starts with a baby Rocket as a regular raccoon playing with his siblings in a cage, before he notices the High Evolutionary walking slowly towards them. And there's so many elements at play here that make this introduction work. The music that plays as the High Evolutionary approaches the cage. Now, we don't get a clear look at him, which makes him seem more ominous. Then there's the fear on Little Rocket's face as it transitions to him in the present. And this all sells the terror of who the High Evolutionary is before we've actually met him. At the same time, the High Evolutionary sends Adam Warlock and Aisha to capture Rocket because he wants to harvest Rocket's brain for further research on his experiments. And writer-director James Gunn cleverly informs us that he's going to show instead of tell us about Rocket's past by using this exchange between Mantis and Star-Lord.
What do we know about where Rocket came from?
He won't talk about it.
The film's beginning shows us that the High Evolutionary is a monstrous individual, but this sets the tone for the 7 flashbacks that we see throughout the film when he first created Rocket. In each flashback, we see his personality escalate, going from being kind and welcoming, filling Rocket with hope for the new world,
That's the new world, Counter-Earth, where the experiments will go once they're ready.
to completely domineering and cruel with the trauma that he inflicts on poor baby Rocket because of how jealous the High Evolutionary is of Rocket's superior intelligence. Now, because of how we see and experience all of this happening, this makes the High Evolutionary one of the MCU's most unforgettable and most evil villains.
Oh yeah, person, that movie made me hate that guy. If it was me, I would have used a special bark to unite all the animals of the world together and trap him in a farmhouse. And then those raccoons that Rocket saved would pull a lever and drop him into a big pot of molasses, and a horse would step on a plank and send him flying into the dirt before he gets arrested. Or, you know, something like that. Yeah, I just hate that guy.
Me too, Doug. But now, compare that to how Kang the Conqueror is presented in Quantumania. In that film's opening flashback, we see Kang save Janet from a creature in the quantum realm. But unlike with the High Evolutionary, we don't get a sense of the kind of threat that he poses to the heroes.
What do you mean? We saw in Loki how Kang and his variants started a multiversal war. I mean, shouldn't we already be scared of him?
Well, yeah, that's true, Doug, but it's only fair that people who haven't seen Loki also get to experience Kang for the first time in this film. But unfortunately, the film expects you to have already seen the first season of Loki. So the general audience that hasn't seen Loki doesn't get the impression that this helpful man is actually a villain.
Continue.
Great. So the plot of the movie has Scott, Cassie, Hank, Janet, and Hope all getting sucked into the quantum realm after Cassie sends a signal down there.
You send a signal down from here, and then it collects the data and it sends it back. And
Wait a minute. You're sending a signal down to the quantum realm. Shut it down.
It's revealed that during Janet's time in the quantum realm that she met and befriended a variant of He Who Remains that we know as Kang the Conqueror, who helped her figure out a way to get back home using a multiversal power core. But once Janet saw a vision of Kang destroying multiple timelines, she abandoned him and used Pym particles to enlarge his power core so Kang couldn't use it. Janet then became a freedom fighter in the quantum realm before she was rescued by Scott and Hank in Ant-Man and the Wasp, while Kang got his powers back and conquered the entire quantum realm.
Everybody got that?
But regardless of whether or not you've seen Loki, Kang's presentation in this film is not nearly as strong as the High Evolutionary's slow burn introduction.
Why, whatever do you mean?
Well, in Guardians, we see High Evolutionary in the present day at 18 minutes into the movie. But in Quantumania, we don't get to see Kang in the present for 59 minutes. Now, on one hand, not showing a villain immediately can help build anticipation. Like how in the first season of Daredevil, no one was even allowed to say the word Kingpin or Fisk for several episodes, until we finally saw him on screen. And at first, Quantumania seemed to be doing something similar before we're introduced to Kang in the present. But the movie spends way too much time telling us about Kang in the meantime instead of showing us.
He will burn the world to find you.
who?
The Conqueror. Conqueror burned our homes. He built his citadel on the bones of our people.
And there's no place you can run, Scott. Not from me, and not from him.
And it's made even more frustrating because by the time that we do meet Kang in the present, he comes off as a lackluster villain. We only hear him talk about how he's killed Avengers before instead of letting us see it.
You're an Avenger. Have I killed you before?
How many Avengers I've killed? All right, I get it!
Let's compare this to another Marvel film, Multiverse of Madness, which began with a strange variant trying to kill America Chavez, which established the stakes for our climax, that our Steven might sacrifice this teenage girl for the greater good. Now granted, we do see a flashback with Kang when Janet saw a vision of him destroying multiple timelines. And sure, I guess it looks pretty cool, but it's really just flashes of people screaming followed by CGI lines blinking out on a timeline. Like, I understand that this guy killed universes, but I don't feel the deaths in those universes. But compare the deaths of trillions in these flashes to the 3 deaths that we see in the Guardians flashback. The flashback scenes between Rocket and the High Evolutionary work so well because we have followed Rocket for so long. So seeing him go through these horrible events in these scenes, like when he's yelled at or when Lila and the other animals are killed, these are emotional gut punches. The High Evolutionary isn't just a supervillain, he's a despicable torturer of animals. Imagine if we actually got to see Kang destroy the homes and people in the quantum realm instead of hearing about it offhand. This would have also helped make characters like Gentora, Quaz, and the other quantum realm people feel more grounded and more three-dimensional. Or what if we actually saw him kill different Avengers? Like, what if Scott and Cassie were held captive in a trophy room where we'd see how Kang has been collecting memorabilia from Avengers that he's killed, like an Iron Man helmet or a broken Captain America shield or even Thor's hammer Mjolnir. Because of our emotional connection to Iron Man, Cap, and Thor, well, this would have added so much more tension and stakes to Quantumania and made Kang more of a villain to be feared and taken seriously. And while we do see that Kang is powerful and capable of being feared, we mostly get empty threats from him, and this makes him feel less effective as an antagonist.
Do you know how many rebellions I have put down?
How many Avengers I've killed?
Man, you always say that. You're all talk, Kang.
And as a result, Kang doesn't feel all that threatening in general. In fact, the only thing he does in the movie that feels threatening in any way is when he holds Cassie hostage.
You're not even scary. You're not even scary.
The High Evolutionary, on the other hand, doesn't have to make threats to be an effective and intimidating villain. We see the things he's done to Rocket. He doesn't have to make a bad guy list without him needing to rattle them off in front of the heroes. Because of this, he commands every scene that he appears in effortlessly, upping the stakes and tension tremendously whenever he is on screen. Another big difference between both villains are their motives for what they're doing, which are key to their characters and what they represent. Kang's goal is much more theoretical and harder to grasp for the audience. He says that the multiverse is dying because of his variants causing incursions, and how he's the only one who can stop them by destroying other universes. But, as we've seen throughout the multiverse saga, the concept of how the multiverse works is far from easy to explain.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
It requires the audience to have seen Loki and other movies like No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness to understand why it works. Compare this to the High Evolutionary. The High Evolutionary's motive is clear and understandable without having to watch anything else. He wants to build a perfect society to rule over and sees anyone with some kind of flaw as undeserving of life.
How could you be part of a perfect species? You're simply a medley of mistakes we could learn from.
And he proves this point when he decides to destroy Counter-Earth because its beings don't fit in with his ideas of perfection.
Even the nice family of bat people that help the Guardians?
Yes, even the nice family of bat people.
Oh man, I like them. The High Evolutionary gets a permanent spot in my burn book.
You have a burn book?
Yeah, man. Doesn't everybody?
Right, and this makes the High Evolutionary the perfect antagonist for Rocket and the Guardians because at their core, the Guardians are a found family of misfits who embrace their imperfections and feel truly at home among each other. They fight back against anyone that tries to control them or change them in any way.
You didn't want to make things perfect. You just hated things the way they are.
And his defeat by the Guardians at the end of the film feels satisfying for such a despicable character. Whereas Kang's defeat by Ant-Man of all people at the end of Quantumania feels half-baked and kind of pathetic for the guy that was built up to be the big bad of the current multiverse saga. And you guys know, I am not a Quantumania hater. I think there were a lot of good things in the movie. I genuinely like the ending with the bunch of ants overpowering Kang. However, you can't deny that all of these events made Kang into an also-ran villain. Somebody who seemed more like a one-off villain like Malekith than an overarching big bad like Thanos. And just as the High Evolutionary was the perfect antithesis to the Guardians and their philosophy, Kang was not the antithesis to anything about Ant-Man. He was simply the antagonist in the film because Marvel needed to set him up for the multiverse saga. I think these two films not only show us the right and wrong way to make a movie, but the right and wrong way to build a franchise. Marvel used to always put characters ahead of plot, and what we started to see in phases 4 and 5 is they started to put the overarching story and cameos and teases ahead of the stories of the characters in the movie that we're actually watching. Hopefully, now that they've course corrected, we'll see more films like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. What do you guys think? How do you think these two movies compare to each other? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.